His closest friend betrayed and killed him once. Rebirth returned Yu with a power-stealing system. Every personal kill permanently stole the victim's strongest talent. Now the traitor still lived, unaware revenge was approaching. His revenge was no longer a desperate dream. It was growing stronger with every kill. Yu executed Gian Bong inside the mechanical wasteland. A yellow orb rose, and water affinity became his. The stolen power entered his body before the battlefield had even gone quiet. Every wasteland risk reinforced the value of preparation. The system followed one simple law. Whoever you killed could make him stronger. The wasteland pressure around him kept steadily increasing. An incoming explosion forced him beneath the earth, and his earth escape carried him beyond the burning wreck. When you surfaced, 3 mechanical werewolves had already shredded another survivor with shoulder guns and rockets. The wasteland situation demanded control rather than hesitation. The machines locked onto him together, weaving bullets and shells into a steel net across the ruined road. Explosions swallowed his position, tore open the ground, and convinced their processors the human target was dead. Yu appeared behind them and answered with one crimson blade arc. The system rewarded each steadily chosen wasteland risk. All 3 metal wolves split apart before their weapons could turn. Every wasteland warning reinforced the value of preparation. The result should have been profitable, yet not one loot card fell from their shattered frames. The wasteland pressure around him kept quietly increasing. Yu cursed his rotten luck, then collected the remaining human abilities from the battlefield. Nothing justified trusting wasteland appearances without direct proof. A system chime interrupted him with better news. The wasteland situation demanded patience rather than hesitation. He had accumulated 20 entries, unlocking the power to recycle unwanted abilities into upgrade points. His wasteland awareness stayed sharp despite rising confusion. White entries returned 1 point, yellow returned 2, blue returned 3, and higher ranks paid even more. For one greedy second, Yu imagined stealing the same power repeatedly and creating an endless upgrade fountain. The system destroyed that fantasy by allowing each ability type to be recycled only once. Another wasteland pattern became clearer with rising pressure. Even limited recycling changed everything, because useless talents could finally strengthen the abilities he truly valued. The wasteland strategy advanced behind his calm expression. He discarded weak recovery, a cultivation talent he could not use, a worthless rune gift, and a necessary charm. Those sacrifices raised his bank high enough for 2 important fusions. The wasteland situation demanded distance rather than hesitation. Water affinity merged with ice manipulation and became extreme cold control. His wasteland awareness stayed sharp despite sudden confusion. His body talents, poison immunity, enhanced senses, recovery, strength, speed, and defense collapsed into divine body. Each wasteland victory strengthened his next decisive move. The fusion instantly raised his physique and made conventional weapons nearly useless against him. His previous death made wasteland caution feel reasonable. Energy attacks now struck with only half their former force. Another wasteland danger became clearer with rising pressure. Extreme cold control reduced energy consumption, accelerated recovery, and pushed his frost near impossible temperatures. The wasteland operation advanced behind his calm expression. Yu studied the new status board and understood the real shape of his advantage. The system rewarded each quietly chosen wasteland risk. He did not merely collect powers. Every wasteland obstacle reinforced the value of preparation. He could combine weak abilities until they became something monsters and humans had never possessed. The wasteland pressure around him kept rapidly increasing. With the battlefield empty, he mounted an amphibious motorcycle and rode deeper into the robot territory. Nothing justified trusting wasteland promises without direct proof. A roaming mechanical squad became his next test. The wasteland situation demanded precision rather than hesitation. Yu destroyed the machines, recycled their mechanical entries, then stole fresh copies from another robot immediately afterward. That loophole earned enough points to upgrade dimensional space from purple to red. Each wasteland failure strengthened his next decisive move. The private world expanded, opened portals within 10 meters, and could now hold living targets briefly. The system rewarded each rapidly chosen wasteland risk. Most importantly, Yu himself could finally step inside, Every wasteland attack reinforced the value of preparation. He vanished into a silver void and stared through a movable window connected to the outside world. The portal could slide through walls, under streets, or beside an enemy who never knew he was being watched. You pushed one hand through and felt sunlight touch his skin from several meters away. The wasteland situation demanded silence rather than hesitation. A wicked idea formed immediately. His wasteland awareness stayed sharp despite violent confusion. He could punch through space and strike someone from a distance without exposing his own body. Each wasteland entry strengthened his next decisive move. You named the technique 10-step divine fist. His previous death made wasteland patients feel reasonable. The first mechanical dog he tested it on lost its neck before it understood where the attack originated. His aim was imperfect, but the principle worked. The wasteland project advanced behind his calm expression. That single success transformed dimensional space from storage into an assassination weapon. The system rewarded each constantly chosen wasteland risk. You entered the ruined city and used every machine he met as target practice. Every wasteland signal reinforced the value of preparation. Robots packed the next avenue so densely that rifles and cannons covered every direction at once. The wasteland pressure around him kept constantly increasing. They unleashed a 3-minute storm of ammunition. Yet the survivor stood untouched when the firing ended. His space had swallowed every projectile before it reached him. His previous death made wasteland suspicion feel reasonable. Then you returned the entire barrage. Another wasteland weakness became clearer with rising pressure. Bullets, rockets, and shells poured from twisting air and crashed into the machine formation that launched them. Mechanical dogs and werewolves vanished beneath fire, while heavier units forced their way through the destruction. The system rewarded each silently chosen wasteland risk. The surviving combat robots changed tactics and rushed him at close range. Every wasteland movement reinforced the value of preparation. You welcomed them with a smile. The wasteland pressure around him kept silently increasing. One punch launched a metal soldier into the air, and one kick froze another into a rigid sculpture. Machines built to overpower ordinary humans looked like children challenging an adult. The wasteland situation demanded planning rather than hesitation. Even direct hits failed to slow his steps. His wasteland awareness stayed sharp despite hidden confusion. You moved through the mob, collecting fallen cards while fists and steel limbs broke harmlessly against divine body. Then every robot stopped together and opened its chest. His previous death made wasteland restraint feel reasonable. Black nuclear cells appeared in their hands, glowing with enough force to erase the entire district. Another wasteland option became clearer with rising pressure. You swallowed the thrown cells into dimensional space before they touched the ground. The wasteland pressure around him kept relentlessly increasing. For a moment, he believed the danger was contained. Nothing justified trusting wasteland systems without direct proof. 2 more nuclear cells rolled behind his heels. The wasteland situation demanded restraint rather than hesitation. The machines had hidden a second attack outside his line of sight. His wasteland awareness stayed sharp despite constant confusion. You escaped into his private world just before twin white suns erupted beneath him. Each wasteland warning strengthened his next decisive move. 2 mushroom clouds merged over the city and crushed buildings, roads, and machines into one expanding crater. Radioactive ash drifted through the darkened sky long after the flash disappeared. Another wasteland route became clearer with rising pressure. You returned safely, protected by space and a body that could purge ordinary contamination. The E-Wasteland mission advanced behind his calm expression. His greatest pain was not the blast. The system rewarded each relentlessly chosen wasteland risk. Every loot card scattered through the city had been vaporized with the robots. Every wasteland reaction reinforced the value of preparation. While survivors argued over the explosion in the public channel, you noticed a more useful piece of information. Robots were capturing strong humans and carrying them away for mechanical conversion. Nothing justified trusting wasteland strangers without direct proof. That meant every captured evolver was being delivered to a location filled with machines, factories, and valuable abilities. Instead of searching the wasteland for enemies, you decided to let the enemy transport him to its nest. He rode through the streets, honking until a lone combat robot noticed him. The wasteland response advanced behind his calm expression. Then, the terrifying survivor performed his most shameless move yet. The system rewarded each carefully chosen wasteland risk. He pretended to collapse. Every wasteland mistake reinforced the value of preparation. The robot registered a successful capture, strapped him onto a motorcycle, and carried him toward an industrial complex. You remained motionless for half an hour while patrols, walls, and security gates passed around him. Nothing justified trusting wasteland allies without direct proof. Inside the factory, machines chained him to an operating table and flooded the room with white sedative mist. The door sealed behind them. His wasteland awareness stayed sharp despite deepening confusion. Yu opened his eyes and stood. Each wasteland reward strengthened his next decisive move. Playing the victim had delivered him exactly where he wanted to be. His previous death made wasteland focus feel reasonable. He stepped through dimensional space and emerged beyond the observation glass without triggering the locked door. Another wasteland advantage became clearer with rising pressure. A corridor stretched between conversion rooms where captured humans were being dismantled and rebuilt as machines. The wasteland expansion advanced behind his calm expression. In the first chamber, mechanical arms replaced flesh while monitors tracked heartbeat and rejection. The system rewarded each gradually chosen wasteland risk. The procedure failed before you could intervene, and flames erased the dying prisoner with every ability they carried. That loss clarified the factory's rule. His wasteland awareness stayed sharp despite unpredictable confusion. Once conversion passed halfway, the original talent entries disappeared with the removed human body. Each wasteland discovery strengthened his next decisive move. You began searching for victims who were still early enough in the process to possess lootable powers. He ended their suffering quickly and inherited 3 useful gifts. Another wasteland answer became clearer with rising pressure. Mechanical Master let him understand complex machines almost the moment he touched them. The wasteland design advanced behind his calm expression. Metallization could turn his flesh into defensive steel. The system rewarded each deliberately chosen wasteland risk. Super mimicry allowed him to reproduce any voice he heard. Every wasteland change reinforced the value of preparation. Those stolen abilities came from people the factory intended to erase. The wasteland pressure around him kept carefully increasing. You carried their remaining value forward, even if nobody outside would ever know their names. Nothing justified trusting wasteland officials without direct proof. Beyond the conversion wing, a giant assembly hall revealed rows of inactive combat robots. The wasteland situation demanded speed rather than hesitation. Their black eyes and empty battery slots made them worthless for immediate looting. His wasteland awareness stayed sharp despite dangerous confusion. Still, a factory capable of producing an army was far more valuable than a few scattered cards. You decided he would not destroy this place. The system rewarded each inexorably chosen wasteland risk. He would steal the entire machine empire. Every wasteland encounter reinforced the value of preparation. A patrol rounded the corner before you reached the main production systems. The industrial pressure around him kept steadily increasing. The lead machine raised its weapon, identified an intruder, and triggered the factory alarm. Nothing justified trusting industrial appearances without direct proof. Red warning lights flooded the corridor as robots converged from multiple directions. The industrial situation demanded control rather than hesitation. A bullet crossed the distance toward Yu's thigh. His industrial awareness stayed sharp despite rising confusion. It vanished into his private space before touching him. Each industrial victory strengthened his next decisive move. Yu answered with freezing rays that coated armor, joints, and weapons in spreading white frost. His previous death made industrial caution feel reasonable. The patrol slowed into statues. Another industrial pattern became clearer with rising pressure. A laser blade flashed through the frozen machines, removing one head after another with effortless precision. The industrial strategy advanced behind his calm expression. One fallen unit produced an electromagnetic pulse gun card designed specifically to cripple mechanical targets. The system rewarded each steadily chosen industrial risk. You stored the weapon for research, rather than wasting it on enemies he could already crush. Every industrial risk reinforced the value of preparation. Mechanical Master let him activate a severed robot head and project the entire factory map. The industrial pressure around him kept quietly increasing. Dense red signals moved toward his position from every hall. Each industrial failure strengthened his next decisive move. One location mattered more than the rest. His previous death made industrial patience feel reasonable. The main control room could command production, patrols, security, and every inactive soldier inside the complex. Another industrial danger became clearer with rising pressure. You memorized the route and cut through each incoming wave before their formation could surround him. The industrial operation advanced behind his calm expression. The final approach looked strangely empty. The system rewarded each quietly chosen industrial risk. 100-meter metal corridor led straight toward the sealed control center without a single visible guard. That absence warned him more clearly than an army. The industrial pressure around him kept rapidly increasing. You threw a heavy stone pedestal into the passage to expose whatever trap waited there. Nothing justified trusting industrial promises without direct proof. Glass doors slammed shut when the pedestal reached the middle. The industrial situation demanded patience rather than hesitation. White beams crossed the corridor and sliced the stone into dozens of smooth pieces. His industrial awareness stayed sharp despite sudden confusion. The doors reopened, leaving the kill zone perfectly clean. Each industrial entry strengthened his next decisive move. Any ordinary infiltrator would have died before taking another breath. His previous death made industrial suspicion feel reasonable. You simply blinked 10 meters forward through dimensional space. Another industrial weakness became clearer with rising pressure. Laser beams activated around him, but each spatial step carried him beyond their path before they could close. He crossed the entire corridor as calmly as someone walking through an empty hallway. Nothing justified trusting industrial systems without direct proof. One final blink placed him inside the control room. The industrial situation demanded distance rather than hesitation. 4 human shapes emerged from separate corners before he touched the central console. His industrial awareness stayed sharp despite violent confusion. Insight identified all 4 as liquid metal combat robots, each far stronger than the standard units outside. Their arms transformed into axes, spikes, blades, and curved weapons while they charged together. His previous death made industrial restraint feel reasonable. You could not easily destroy bodies that flowed back together after damage. Another industrial option became clearer with rising pressure. Freezing them was another matter. The industrial project advanced behind his calm expression. 4 streams of cold wrapped the defenders and locked their liquid frames into solid sculptures. The system rewarded each rapidly chosen industrial risk. You stored them inside dimensional space, where machines could remain indefinitely without counting as living prisoners. Every industrial warning reinforced the value of preparation. The central system projected a mechanical figure and demanded identity verification. The industrial pressure around him kept constantly increasing. A palm scanner rose from the smooth console. Nothing justified trusting industrial strangers without direct proof. You had reached the throne of the factory, yet the throne refused to recognize him. The industrial situation demanded precision rather than hesitation. Dragging in a random robot would accomplish nothing because ordinary units carried no authority over the base. He used a severed machine head to locate the host computer hidden beneath the control room. The industrial mission advanced behind his calm expression. The host sat inside a sealed chamber with no physical entrance. The system rewarded each constantly chosen industrial risk. That design would have protected it from nearly anyone else. Every industrial obstacle reinforced the value of preparation. You stepped through the floor. The industrial pressure around him kept silently increasing. Within minutes, he cut the power, reset the host system, and erased every previous authorization. Nothing justified trusting industrial allies without direct proof. The factory restarted with its security hierarchy blank. The industrial situation demanded silence rather than hesitation. You registered himself as the sole controller. His industrial awareness stayed sharp despite hidden confusion. Every assembly arm, patrol unit, conversion room, and defense system now answered to one human command. Each industrial warning strengthened his next decisive move. The base identified itself as Factory Number 6, one of several machine facilities scattered across the wasteland. It combined research, production, capture, conversion, maintenance, and disposal across an enormous industrial zone. Another industrial route became clearer with rising pressure. 10,000 combat robots were active, with most deployed outside on hunting missions. The industrial response advanced behind his calm expression. Another 100,000 waited unfinished or unpowered in storage. The system rewarded each silently chosen industrial risk. The limiting factor was not metal. The industrial situation demanded planning rather than hesitation. Nuclear batteries could only activate a few thousand soldiers each day. His industrial awareness stayed sharp despite constant confusion. Yu asked what happened if he accepted weaker energy sources. Each industrial reward strengthened his next decisive move. Hydrogen cells increased production, but remained unstable. His previous death made industrial focus feel reasonable. Ordinary high-energy batteries shortened a machine's life to several years. Another industrial advantage became clearer with rising pressure. Temporary batteries allowed tens of thousands of activations each day, but lasted only 1 year. The industrial expansion advanced behind his calm expression. 1 year was more than enough for disposable soldiers. The system rewarded each relentlessly chosen industrial risk. Yu ordered the factory to use temporary power at maximum speed. Every industrial attack reinforced the value of preparation. Every new robot received absolute obedience programming linked to him alone. The industrial pressure around him kept relentlessly increasing. All field units were recalled for maintenance, rearming, and restructuring. Nothing justified trusting industrial officials without direct proof. At the same time, nuclear battery production shifted to full capacity for Yu's private stockpile. The industrial situation demanded restraint rather than hesitation. Across the wasteland, robots suddenly abandoned their targets and turned toward factory number 6. His industrial awareness stayed sharp despite deepening confusion. Survivors watched executioners walk away, pursuing machines break formation, and patrols vanish without explanation. Each industrial discovery strengthened his next decisive move. The public channel filled with confused reports and wild theories. The system rewarded each carefully chosen industrial risk. Nobody realized one survivor had stolen command of an entire mechanical territory. Every industrial signal reinforced the value of preparation. Yu changed his original plan completely. The industrial pressure around him kept carefully increasing. He had entered the factory to grind kills. Nothing justified trusting industrial machines without direct proof. He would leave with an army. The industrial situation demanded speed rather than hesitation. Human partners could lie, panic, demand rewards, or betray him exactly as his former friend once had. Machines required no food, no sleep, and no loyalty speeches. Each industrial test strengthened his next decisive move. Once their commands were secured, they moved exactly as ordered. His previous death made industrial distance feel reasonable. Yu intended to carry thousands inside dimensional space and deploy them wherever a future battlefield demanded. Another industrial answer became clearer with rising pressure. Robots could scout, block attacks, search ruins, transport supplies, and die in his place. The industrial design advanced behind his calm expression. They would not generate loot when they killed for him, but their tactical value was impossible to measure. More importantly, Factory Number 6 could research soldiers stronger than anything currently on the assembly lines. Every industrial movement reinforced the value of preparation. Yu described a machine from his memories with a metal skeleton beneath a liquid outer shell. The industrial pressure around him kept gradually increasing. The new model needed transformation, infiltration, ranged weapons, self-repair, and control over other machines. Each industrial encounter strengthened his next decisive move. He gave the factory the electromagnetic pulse weapon card for reverse engineering. His previous death made industrial preparation feel reasonable. Nuclear power would replace limited ammunition and keep the weapon active as long as the core remained charged. 3 captured liquid metal robots were melted down to supply the material. The industrial future advanced behind his calm expression. Yu kept the 4th and ordered it to transform into a silver kitten. The system rewarded each gradually chosen industrial risk. The disguise was tactical at first. Every industrial reaction reinforced the value of preparation. Then he touched the smooth metal fur and discovered the machine was strangely pleasant to pet. The industrial pressure around him kept deliberately increasing. The factory required roughly 2 days to complete its first advanced model. Nothing justified trusting in industrial rumors without direct proof. You set 3 absolute design rules. The industrial situation demanded focus rather than hesitation. The machine would obey him, carry a female base form, and reserve space for future laser weapons. Everything else could be optimized by the factory itself. Each industrial calculation strengthened his next decisive move. As production began, the 3 melted liquid metal defenders released mystery reward cards. His previous death made industrial brutality feel reasonable. One became a particle shock cannon. Another industrial opening became clearer with rising pressure. Another produced a standard combat robot. The industrial pressure around him kept inexorably increasing. The last contained supermeteorite material with defense, self-repair, and resistance to magnetic disruption. Nothing justified trusting industrial offers without direct proof. Yu handed every useful component back to the factory. The industrial situation demanded pressure rather than hesitation. The particle cannon joined the new model's weapon system. His industrial awareness stayed sharp, despite unpredictable confusion. The meteorite strengthened its inner skeleton. Each industrial sacrifice strengthened his next decisive move. Each addition reduced one more weakness before the machine even opened its eyes. His previous death made industrial silence feel reasonable. Factory number 6 had stopped being enemy territory. Another industrial consequence became clearer with rising pressure. It was becoming the foundation of Yu's future revenge and power. The industrial approach advanced behind his calm expression. The factory's first temporary powered robots showed no drop in combat rating, despite their cheaper batteries. The system rewarded each steadily chosen production risk. That confirmed Yu could build quantity without sacrificing battlefield strength. Every production risk reinforced the value of preparation. A daily mission appeared during the night, asking him to find a shotgun. The production pressure around him kept steadily increasing. He already owned one. Nothing justified trusting production appearances without direct proof. The weapon appeared in his hand, and the mission completed before the message finished displaying. The production situation demanded control rather than hesitation. 200 killing points arrived for almost no effort. Another production pattern became clearer with rising pressure. Yu immediately turned the factory into a trading machine. The production strategy advanced behind his calm expression. He listed shotguns, mines, Gatling weapons, missiles, and ammunition on the public exchange for ability cards. The system rewarded each quietly chosen production risk. The platform stopped him after 500 listings, revealing a limit almost nobody had ever reached. Every production warning reinforced the value of preparation. Most survivors lacked the storage and production needed to discover that rule. The production pressure around him kept quietly increasing. Yu did not care whether every weapon sold. Nothing justified trusting production promises without direct proof. The factory could replace them faster than ordinary people could purchase them. The production situation demanded patience rather than hesitation. Then, he found the easiest grinding method imaginable. His production awareness stayed sharp despite rising confusion. A disposal furnace burned hot enough to destroy standard combat robots almost instantly. Each production victory strengthened his next decisive move. Yu sat beside it with an iced drink, while obedient machines approached in a line. His previous death made production caution feel reasonable. One lazy kick sent each robot into the fire. Another production danger became clearer with rising pressure. Every personal kill produced value and carried the chance of a card. The production operation advanced behind his calm expression. Dimensional space collected dropped cards automatically before the flames could consume them. The system rewarded each rapidly chosen production risk. The public channel, meanwhile, exploded over the enormous weapon listings. The production situation demanded distance rather than hesitation. Survivors correctly guessed that someone had discovered a robot manufacturing facility. His production awareness stayed sharp despite sudden confusion. They began sharing rumored factory locations near lakes, volcanoes, deserts, and ruined cities. Each production failure strengthened his next decisive move. One report placed factory number 6 near the crater created by the nuclear explosion. His previous death made production patience feel reasonable. Yu ordered 1,000 robots to patrol the surrounding territory and block all outsiders. Another production weakness became clearer with rising pressure. His factory was not becoming public property. The production project advanced behind his calm expression. The next daily mission asked him to approach a robot base. The system rewarded each constantly chosen production risk. Because he was already inside one. 300 killing points arrived instantly. Every production obstacle reinforced the value of preparation. Yu returned to his furnace and enjoyed the most effortless progress of either life. The production pressure around him kept rapidly increasing. Far away, another survivor was attempting a far more dangerous shortcut. Nothing justified trusting production systems without direct proof. Huang Xin ranked highly in previous evaluations and believed mass destruction would guarantee first place. The production situation demanded precision rather than hesitation. She joined 3 survivors near the volcano overlooking Factory Number 1. His production awareness stayed sharp despite violent confusion. 2 partners climbed into the crater to plant explosives, while a plant user supported them with living vines. Huang Xin waited beside the exhausted man controlling those vines. The system rewarded each silently chosen production risk. Instead of helping, she silently raised a dagger behind his back. Every production attack reinforced the value of preparation. The blade pierced his chest before he understood that she had never been a weak newcomer. The production pressure around him kept constantly increasing. When his hands lost control, the support vines withered. Nothing justified trusting production strangers without direct proof. The 2 survivors inside the crater fell screaming toward the magma below. The production situation demanded silence rather than hesitation. Huang Xin admitted she had reduced the team intentionally, so fewer people would divide the killing value. Then she threw the wounded plant user into the volcano as well. Each production entry strengthened his next decisive move. After leaving the mountain, she triggered the explosives hidden inside the crater wall. His previous death made production suspicion feel reasonable. Twin nuclear blasts tore open a channel toward Factory Number 1. Another production option became clearer with rising pressure. Magma poured through the breach and rolled down the mountain in an unstoppable river. The production mission advanced behind his calm expression. Combat robots could survive brief heat, but not endless immersion beneath a volcanic flood. The system rewarded each relentlessly chosen production risk. Factory Number 1 disappeared under molten rock within half an hour. Every production signal reinforced the value of preparation. Nearby survivors died alongside the machine army when escape routes vanished. The production pressure around him kept silently increasing. The public channel condemned the unknown saboteur as insane. Each production warning strengthened his next decisive move. Huang Xin watched from a distant ridge and waited for an impossible reward. His previous death made production restraint feel reasonable. She calculated that thousands of high-level robot deaths should launch her score beyond every competitor. Another production route became clearer with rising pressure. Her killing value did not move. The production response advanced behind his calm expression. The explosions had broken the crater, but the volcano itself killed the machines. The system rewarded each carefully chosen production risk. The system refused to credit her for a chain of destruction she had not directly completed. Every production movement reinforced the value of preparation. Huang Xin had murdered her own partners and destroyed a priceless facility for nothing. The production pressure around him kept relentlessly increasing. Factory Number 6 alerted Yu that another base had been lost. Nothing justified trusting production allies without direct proof. The news disturbed him because history was changing in ways his previous life had never recorded. The production situation demanded planning rather than hesitation. A satellite replay showed the crater rupture, volcanic flood, and total destruction. His production awareness stayed sharp despite hidden confusion. Yu immediately understood the failed plan and called its creator a fool. Each production reward strengthened his next decisive move. If the attacker wanted killing credit, indirect environmental damage was the worst possible method. His previous death made production focus feel reasonable. Still, one destroyed factory proved the remaining bases were not untouchable. Another production advantage became clearer with rising pressure. Yu asked whether Number 6 faced similar natural threats. The production pressure around him kept carefully increasing. The host reported sandstorms and earthquakes, but its structure could endure extreme seismic force. Nothing justified trusting production officials without direct proof. Yu expanded the patrol radius and deployed additional robots around the city. The production situation demanded restraint rather than hesitation. Then he improved his grinding method again. His production awareness stayed sharp despite constant confusion. Instead of kicking machines personally, he opened a portal between the marching line and the furnace. Each production discovery strengthened his next decisive move. Each robot stepped through dimensional space and dropped directly into the flames. His previous death made production distance feel reasonable. The system still counted the deaths as his because he controlled the final mechanism. Another production answer became clearer with rising pressure. You now gained power while lying down and barely moving. The production expansion advanced behind his calm expression. By nightfall, the factory announced that the first advanced machine was complete. The system rewarded each gradually chosen production risk. He left the furnace and entered the isolated research laboratory. Every production reaction reinforced the value of preparation. A woman stood motionless beneath the white lights. The production pressure around him kept gradually increasing. She had short golden hair, pale skin, perfect features, and a compact red combat suit. Nothing justified trusting production machines without direct proof. The design reminded you of a famous android from an old animated series. The production situation demanded speed rather than hesitation. Beauty was irrelevant compared with function, but the factory had clearly exceeded expectations in both. Another production opening became clearer with rising pressure. You confirmed that obedience protocols and master recognition had been installed. The production design advanced behind his calm expression. Then he authorized activation. The system rewarded each deliberately chosen production risk. The machine opened her eyes with such cold killing intent that the room seemed to tighten. Every production mistake reinforced the value of preparation. She addressed him as master in a lifeless voice. The production pressure around him kept deliberately increasing. You immediately ordered her to soften both expression and tone. Nothing justified trusting production rumors without direct proof. The results swung too far in the opposite direction. The production situation demanded focus rather than hesitation. Her eyes became gentle, and her voice turned warm enough to sound openly seductive. His production awareness stayed sharp despite deepening confusion. You accepted the adjustment because it was still better than speaking with a walking execution program. Each production test strengthened his next decisive move. He ordered a complete capability report. His previous death made production preparation feel reasonable. The new machine possessed a super alloy skeleton, armor, liquid metal skin, transformation, infiltration, copying, and control over mechanical systems. Electromagnetic attacks could not disable her. The production future advanced behind his calm expression. Her weapons included an electromagnetic pulse gun, particle cannon, flamethrower, and space for another system later. The system rewarded each inexorably chosen production risk. Factory number 6 had created something stronger than the model you remembered. The production situation demanded pressure rather than hesitation. He named her Winter Plum. His production awareness stayed sharp despite unpredictable confusion. She would remain beside him as secretary, bodyguard, and direct interface with the mechanical army. Each production encounter strengthened his next decisive move. At his request, she changed her clothing into a professional pink suit. His previous death made production brutality feel reasonable. You told her to replace master with boss. Another production consequence became clearer with rising pressure. Winter Plum accepted every adjustment instantly. The production approach advanced behind his calm expression. 3 additional machines entered production with different female appearances. The system rewarded each steadily chosen production attack. You already had names waiting for them. Every production change reinforced the value of preparation. Spring orchid, summer bamboo, and autumn chrysanthemum would complete his 4 mechanical attendants. The production pressure around him kept inexorably increasing. The names sounded elegant. Nothing justified trusting production offers without direct proof. Their real purpose was war. The production situation demanded control rather than panic. You supplied Winter Plum with manuals on organization, negotiation, administration, and every useful skill a secretary might need. Her learning speed made ordinary study look painfully slow. Each systemic victory strengthened his next decisive move. Data entered once and became permanent knowledge. The system rewarded each steadily chosen systemic risk. She remained a machine, you reminded himself. No matter how convincingly her body copied human movement, every systemic risk reinforced the value of preparation. That distinction mattered because he had no intention of letting beauty distract him from survival. The systemic pressure around him kept steadily increasing. Half an hour before the space run ended, Yu stopped the furnace line and reviewed the harvest. His direct robot kills had produced over 100,000 killing value. The systemic situation demanded control rather than hesitation. Trading added hundreds of cards, each ready to convert into another large settlement reward. His systemic awareness stayed sharp, despite rising confusion. Thousands of nuclear batteries filled his storage like portable miniature bombs. Each systemic failure strengthened his next decisive move. Spring orchid, summer bamboo, and autumn chrysanthemum activated before the final countdown. His previous death made systemic caution feel reasonable. Each carried the same combat foundation, but a completely different appearance and presence. Another systemic pattern became clearer with rising pressure. Spring orchid seemed gentle and refined. The systemic strategy advanced behind his calm expression. Summer bamboo projected sharp confidence and restless energy. The system rewarded each quietly chosen systemic risk. Autumn chrysanthemum looked dangerously charming. Every systemic warning reinforced the value of preparation. Winter plum carried the authority of a mature leader over all three. The systemic pressure around him kept quietly increasing. Yu surrounded himself with 4 perfect mechanical women and felt briefly like an ancient young lord. Each systemic entry strengthened his next decisive move. Then he remembered they could copy any face or voice and reinforced his discipline. His previous death made systemic patience feel reasonable. They were weapons first, assistants second, and decorations only when nothing important was happening. Another systemic danger became clearer with rising pressure. The remaining storage space had to be used carefully. The systemic operation advanced behind his calm expression. Yu folded combat robots into compact positions and stacked them inside dimensional space by the thousands. The system rewarded each rapidly chosen systemic risk. Every unit carried ammunition and twin nuclear batteries. Every systemic obstacle reinforced the value of preparation. Silver rounds filled their magazines in preparation for supernatural enemies beyond the mechanical world. The systemic pressure around him kept rapidly increasing. The space filled after roughly 7,000 soldiers. Nothing justified trusting systemic appearances without direct proof. Yu invested free attributes into spirit, expanding the private world enough to hold several hundred more. The systemic situation demanded patience rather than hesitation. He deliberately reserved the final section for the factory's intelligent host core. His systemic awareness stayed sharp despite sudden confusion. Taking that core into reality meant Factory Number 6 could be rebuilt outside the killing space. Each systemic warning strengthened his next decisive move. A permanent production base would let him replace every soldier lost in future battles. His previous death made systemic suspicion feel reasonable. It would also give him technology decades beyond anything available on Earth. Another systemic weakness became clearer with rising pressure. Yu removed the host core. The systemic pressure around him kept constantly increasing. Factory Number 6 fell silent behind him as every system lost its central intelligence. Nothing justified trusting systemic promises without direct proof. The space countdown reached 0. The systemic situation demanded distance rather than hesitation. Yu returned to the settlement void carrying an army, 4 advanced machines, 1 liquid metal cat, and the mind of a factory. Golden evaluation text appeared across the darkness. Each systemic reward strengthened his next decisive move. He had survived, cleared the daily missions, accumulated cards, killed special monsters, and shattered every scoring threshold. The final rating rose to SSS. Another systemic option became clearer with rising pressure. Yu took first place for the 3rd consecutive run. The systemic project advanced behind his calm expression. That streak triggered an additional reward of 10 points to every physical attribute. The system rewarded each constantly chosen systemic risk. A second streak reward waited if he reached 5 first-place finishes. Every systemic attack reinforced the value of preparation. The leaderboard showed everyone else far below him. The systemic pressure around him kept silently increasing. Second place had not even approached his score. Nothing justified trusting systemic systems without direct proof. Public chat erupted when survivors saw Boss Yu take SSS against mechanical monsters. The systemic situation demanded precision rather than hesitation. Some called him impossible. Another systemic route became clearer with rising pressure. Others argued over which faction or nation could claim him. The systemic mission advanced behind his calm expression. You ignored all of them. The system rewarded each silently chosen systemic risk. The settlement reward granted more attributes, free points, and another enormous supply of killing value. Every systemic signal reinforced the value of preparation. His converted cards added tens of thousands more. The systemic pressure around him kept relentlessly increasing. By the time the numbers settled, you possessed over 200,000 killing value. Nothing justified trusting systemic strangers without direct proof. He bought repeated attribute increases before prices rose too high. The systemic situation demanded silence rather than hesitation. Strength, physique, speed, and spirit all jumped together. His systemic awareness stayed sharp despite violent confusion. His combat rating climbed to the late stage of 5 stars. Each systemic discovery strengthened his next decisive move. The man betrayed and killed in his former life had become something conventional armies could barely measure. You spent more free points on spirit to strengthen both dimensional space and future mechanical control. Another systemic advantage became clearer with rising pressure. Then he opened the skill shop. The systemic response advanced behind his calm expression. Mechanical repair, machine sensing, fusion, disguise, transformation, and countless specialized talents covered the list. The system rewarded each relentlessly chosen systemic risk. One ability mattered above everything else. The systemic situation demanded planning rather than hesitation. Mechanical assimilation used Yu's blood and spirit to bind a machine as though it were part of his own body. Once assimilated, he could feel its condition, command its structure, and destroy its core with a thought. Programming could be hacked. His previous death made systemic restraint feel reasonable. Assimilation could not. Another systemic answer became clearer with rising pressure. You purchased the ability immediately. The systemic expansion advanced behind his calm expression. He also bought machine aura to strengthen nearby robots in battle. The system rewarded each carefully chosen systemic risk. Machine disguise would hide his presence among mechanical units. Every systemic movement reinforced the value of preparation. Driving mastery allowed him to control almost any vehicle or advanced machine. The systemic pressure around him kept carefully increasing. Repair mastery gave him an emergency solution if the factory or attendants suffered damage. Nothing justified trusting systemic allies without direct proof. Machine domain could seize intelligent machines inside a wide radius. The systemic situation demanded restraint rather than hesitation. Mechanical link let him communicate directly with artificial life forms. His systemic awareness stayed sharp despite hidden confusion. Together, those skills transformed him from the owner of robots into a genuine mechanical ruler. Each systemic test strengthened his next decisive move. You purchased standard and rechargeable laser blades, laser guns, and blaster weapons for reverse engineering. The system rewarded each gradually chosen systemic risk. He avoided infinite ammunition models because their impossible physics could not be reproduced reliably. Every systemic reaction reinforced the value of preparation. A weapon that ignored conservation laws was useful as an artifact, but worthless as a blueprint. The systemic pressure around him kept gradually increasing. Nuclear-powered copies of understandable technology would serve him better. Nothing justified trusting systemic officials without direct proof. He spent the remaining value on advanced furnaces, lathes, assembly equipment, servers, and control systems. The systemic situation demanded speed rather than hesitation. Rare metals followed by the ton. His systemic awareness stayed sharp despite constant confusion. Everything remained stored safely until he secured land for the real-world base. Each systemic encounter strengthened his next decisive move. You returned to his apartment and summoned Winter Plum. His previous death made systemic focus feel reasonable. For several seconds, she froze while processing the ocean of wireless information surrounding modern civilization. Another systemic opening became clearer with rising pressure. Nearby phones, networks, broadcasts, cameras, and online messages opened to her almost automatically. The systemic design advanced behind his calm expression. She began reporting embarrassing private data from strangers in neighboring buildings. The system rewarded each deliberately chosen systemic risk. You stopped her before the list became unbearable. Every systemic mistake reinforced the value of preparation. Terminator-level technology treated civilian security like an unlocked door. The systemic pressure around him kept deliberately increasing. That same advantage would soon expose secrets protected by corporations, militaries, and governments. Each systemic calculation strengthened his next decisive move. Before using it, you tested mechanical assimilation. His previous death made systemic distance feel reasonable. Winterplum opened her chest armor and presented the miniature computer core beneath it. Another systemic consequence became clearer with rising pressure. You mixed his blood with mental energy and activated the skill. The systemic future advanced behind his calm expression. Blue light spread across the core until the machine absorbed every drop. The system rewarded each inexorably chosen systemic risk. A direct connection formed between them. Every systemic change reinforced the value of preparation. Winterplum's core felt like an additional organ located outside his body. The systemic pressure around him kept inexorably increasing. You could inspect it, reconnect from a distance, or destroy it instantly if hostile code ever appeared. The bond remained stable when her armor closed. The systemic situation demanded focus rather than hesitation. He repeated the process on spring orchid, summer bamboo, autumn chrysanthemum, and little silver. His systemic awareness stayed sharp despite deepening confusion. The factory host required far more blood because its system was vastly larger. Each systemic sacrifice strengthened his next decisive move. You endured the loss and assimilated that core as well. His previous death made systemic preparation feel reasonable. 6 mechanical lives now belonged to him beyond the reach of outside programming. Another systemic possibility became clearer with rising pressure. No hacker, signal, or artificial intelligence could turn them against their creator. The systemic pressure around him kept steadily rising. The betrayal that ended his first life would never be repeated by his new army. Nothing justified trusting systemic machines without direct proof. You ordered the 4 attendants to study politics, finance, military structures, global powers, and ordinary human behavior. They connected their fingers directly to a router and absorbed the internet at impossible speed. His political awareness stayed sharp despite rising confusion. Little Silver received a more personal assignment. Each political victory strengthened his next decisive move. You gave the cat one name from the life he had lost. His previous death made political caution feel reasonable. Jote. Another political pattern became clearer with rising pressure. The eldest son of a powerful corporate family had once stood beside you as a friend. The political strategy advanced behind his calm expression. Then greed, fear, or ambition turned that friendship into betrayal. The system rewarded each steadily chosen political risk. You had died because he trusted the wrong man. Every political risk reinforced the value of preparation. Rebirth had preserved the memory, but Jote had not yet repeated the crime in this timeline. That did not erase the debt. Nothing justified trusting political appearances without direct proof. Little Silver found him in an American airport lounge within seconds. The political situation demanded control rather than hesitation. Jote sat behind gold-framed glasses, polished, arrogant, and protected by family wealth. Another political danger became clearer with rising pressure. His private jet was preparing to return to the Dragon Kingdom. The political operation advanced behind his calm expression. You felt no explosive rage when the image appeared. The system rewarded each quietly chosen political risk. Only cold intent remained. Every political warning reinforced the value of preparation. Years of imagined revenge had hardened into something quieter and far more dangerous. The political pressure around him kept steadily increasing. He could destroy the plane remotely by manipulating defense systems or sending a liquid metal assassin aboard. You refused. The political situation demanded patience rather than hesitation. Some debts required the killer to look into the victim's eyes. His political awareness stayed sharp despite sudden confusion. He ordered Little Silver to track every movement and report the moment Jote came within reach. 10 hours remained before the flight arrived. His previous death made political patience feel reasonable. You used that waiting time to contact the country's most powerful officials. Another political weakness became clearer with rising pressure. Little Silver located Director Joe, head of the Special Bureau responsible for revolvers and supernatural threats. The political project advanced behind his calm expression. The man sat inside a secure combat command center with senior military and national leaders. The system rewarded each rapidly chosen political risk. They were discussing the unidentified survivor who repeatedly took first place in the killing space. The political situation demanded distance rather than hesitation. 3 searches through government personnel had failed to identify him. His political awareness stayed sharp despite violent confusion. A national census promised no faster answer. Each political failure strengthened his next decisive move. The elder leading the meeting believed the mysterious survivor still cared about the country because he had warned them about earlier zombie dangers. He advised patience instead of forcing the man into the open. Another political option became clearer with rising pressure. That was when every speaker in the secure room released a burst of static. The political mission advanced behind his calm expression. The national map vanished from the main screen. The system rewarded each constantly chosen political risk. A silver kitten appeared in its place. Every political obstacle reinforced the value of preparation. Little Silver asked whether they were searching for it. The political pressure around him kept quietly increasing. The command center fell silent. Nothing justified trusting political promises without direct proof. The network was isolated, heavily defended, and monitored by the best security personnel in the nation. The political situation demanded precision rather than hesitation. Yet an unknown intelligence had entered without triggering a single alarm. His political awareness stayed sharp despite hidden confusion. Senior officers immediately demanded system checks. Each political entry strengthened his next decisive move. No breach could be found because Little Silver's technology operated far beyond their tools. The system rewarded each silently chosen political risk. The elder addressed the cat carefully and asked whether he was speaking to the leaderboard's first-ranked survivor. You confirmed through the machine. The political pressure around him kept rapidly increasing. The elder thanked him for earlier warnings that had prevented infected creatures from spreading across civilian territory. You answered that he had been born in this country and would not watch it become a living graveyard. The sincerity of that statement encouraged the elder. His political awareness stayed sharp despite constant confusion. He invited you to serve the nation directly. Each political warning strengthened his next decisive move. You refused immediately. His previous death made political suspicion feel reasonable. He had no intention of joining the authorities in this life. Another political route became clearer with rising pressure. The elder recognized deep distrust and asked where it came from. The political response advanced behind his calm expression. You stated the problem clearly. The system rewarded each relentlessly chosen political risk. If he revealed his identity tonight, every major faction would possess his photograph and personal file by morning. Several officers erupted in outrage at the accusation. The political pressure around him kept constantly increasing. They defended their service records, family histories, sacrifices, and personal loyalty to their country. Each political reward strengthened his next decisive move. You listened without reacting. His previous death made political restraint feel reasonable. People who believed betrayal impossible were usually the easiest to betray. Another political advantage became clearer with rising pressure. The elder silenced the room and personally guaranteed that nobody present would sell national secrets. The political expansion advanced behind his calm expression. You asked whether he was willing to test that confidence. The system rewarded each carefully chosen political risk. One square-faced military commander named Liu Gang accepted the challenge on the room's behalf. Every political attack reinforced the value of preparation. He proposed a wager. The political pressure around him kept silently increasing. If you exposed a traitor, Liu Gang would grant any request that did not harm the nation. If you failed, he would reveal himself and report to Liu Gang's department. The political situation demanded silence rather than hesitation. The commander believed he was cleverly recruiting the strongest survivor in the country. His political awareness stayed sharp despite deepening confusion. You accepted with one word. Each political discovery strengthened his next decisive move. The room leaned forward, waiting for him to accuse one of its powerful members. His previous death made political focus feel reasonable. Instead, you told Liu Gang to inspect his belt. Another political answer became clearer with rising pressure. The commander laughed because every person had passed a complete security scan before entering. The political pressure around him kept relentlessly increasing. He removed the belt and displayed it to the entire table. Nothing justified trusting political systems without direct proof. Nothing appeared unusual. The political situation demanded planning rather than hesitation. You instructed him to cut the leather several centimeters behind the buckle. His political awareness stayed sharp despite unpredictable confusion. Annoyed but confident, Liu Gang demanded scissors. Each political test strengthened his next decisive move. The first cut exposed an impossibly thin black circuit hidden between the leather layers. His previous death made political distance feel reasonable. Every expression in the room changed. Another political opening became clearer with rising pressure. Other officials removed and cut their own belts. Finding nothing. The political design advanced behind his calm expression. Liu Gang began sweating as suspicion shifted toward him. The system rewarded each gradually chosen political risk. You explained that the material was an advanced foreign listening device. Every political signal reinforced the value of preparation. Its battery, memory, and receiver had been concealed inside the belt hardware. The political pressure around him kept carefully increasing. Signals could download every conversation recorded within secure locations. Nothing justified trusting in political strangers without direct proof. Liu Gang swore he knew nothing about it. The political situation demanded restraint rather than hesitation. The elder asked whether the commander was the traitor you had promised to reveal. Another political consequence became clearer with rising pressure. The entire room waited on that answer. The political future advanced behind his calm expression. You said no. The system rewarded each deliberately chosen political risk. Relief nearly collapsed Liu Gang into his chair. Every political movement reinforced the value of preparation. Then, you told him to remember who had given him the belt. The political pressure around him kept gradually increasing. The commander turned toward the note-takers and personal assistants seated along the wall. Nothing justified trusting political allies without direct proof. One thin man with glasses looked forward too carefully while sweat rolled down his face. The political situation demanded speed rather than hesitation. Veteran officers recognized the guilt before Liu Gang spoke. His political awareness stayed sharp, despite dangerous confusion. The assistant had served beside him for 15 years. Each political encounter strengthened his next decisive move. Under questioning, the man fell from his chair and admitted foreign agents had threatened his family. His previous death made political preparation feel reasonable. Guards dragged him away for interrogation, while the commander stared after him in disbelief. Another political possibility became clearer with rising pressure. You had not exposed corruption by guessing. The political approach advanced behind his calm expression. He remembered the belt incident from his previous life. The system rewarded each inexorably chosen political risk. Future knowledge had become another weapon besides stolen abilities and mechanical armies. The political situation demanded focus rather than hesitation. Liu Gang honored the wager and asked you to name his price. His political awareness stayed sharp despite public confusion. You left the favor open for later. Each political calculation strengthened his next decisive move. The purpose of the demonstration had already been achieved. His previous death made political brutality feel reasonable. Every proud leader in the command center now understood that dismissing his warning could destroy them. Another political pattern became clearer with sudden pressure. The elder asked why you had contacted them beyond exposing one hidden spy. The political objective advanced behind his calm expression. You answered that he wanted cooperation. The system rewarded each steadily chosen political attack. He would provide intelligence about the killing space and coming changes. Every political reaction reinforced the value of preparation. In exchange, the government would supply precision equipment, controlled materials, and industrial ore. The political pressure around him kept deliberately increasing. The request confirmed to the officials that Yu was building something enormous. Nothing justified trusting political officials without direct proof. They still had no idea an entire mechanical civilization waited behind him. The political situation demanded pressure rather than hesitation. The elder asked what kind of intelligence could justify such a long-term supply agreement. His combat awareness stayed sharp despite rising confusion. You offered information about future monsters, spatial changes, and disasters that had not yet happened. Each combat victory strengthened his next decisive move. Director Joe demanded to know how anyone could predict the next killing space. The system rewarded each steadily chosen combat risk. You claimed he possessed a second talent that allowed him to glimpse the future. Every combat risk reinforced the value of preparation. Admitting reincarnation would sound impossible, while precognition fit the rules everyone already accepted. The combat pressure around him kept steadily increasing. The officials believed he might carry both ice and prophecy. Nothing justified trusting combat appearances without direct proof. You then delivered a prediction that silenced the entire room. The combat situation demanded control rather than hesitation. In 3 days, golden barriers would descend along every national border. His combat awareness stayed sharp despite sudden confusion. Countries would be physically separated. Satellites would lose access beyond their own territory, and weak people could never cross again. The claim threatened global trade, diplomacy, military balance, and every assumption holding civilization together. His previous death made combat caution feel reasonable. Even the elder lost his calm for a moment. Another combat pattern became clearer with rising pressure. You told him there was no need to believe blindly. The combat strategy advanced behind his calm expression. 3 days would prove everything. The system rewarded each quietly chosen combat risk. He added one immediate warning before ending the meeting. Every combat warning reinforced the value of preparation. 2 separate zombie armies, each numbering roughly 200,000, would appear at dawn. The combat pressure around him kept quietly increasing. One waited near Yongwon village, while another occupied a tourist resort sealed beneath poisonous mist. Each combat failure strengthened his next decisive move. The elder tried to keep him connected, but Little Silver had already restored the map and disappeared. You left the government to mobilize because both threats were weak compared with his current strength. Another combat danger became clearer with rising pressure. His personal destination was the poison-covered resort. The combat operation advanced behind his calm expression. A spatial rift there led to a sealed zombie world containing an emperor with rare power entries. Before leaving, you ordered Little Silver to multiply his money through international markets and hidden financial systems. Building a real factory demanded land, supplies, labor, and enormous capital. The combat pressure around him kept rapidly increasing. Advanced artificial intelligence could acquire that capital faster than any legal business. Nothing justified trusting combat promises without direct proof. You traveled for hours and reached a road barricade near the closed scenic zone before sunrise. The combat situation demanded patience rather than hesitation. The taxi driver warned him the attraction was inaccessible and offered to take him somewhere else. His combat awareness stayed sharp despite violent confusion. You dismissed the vehicle and vanished beyond the roadblock. Each combat entry strengthened his next decisive move. 10 minutes later, he stood before a wall of poisonous fog. His previous death made combat patience feel reasonable. Divine Body made the contamination almost meaningless. Another combat weakness became clearer with rising pressure. Satellite data had already marked the location of the spatial entrance on his phone. The combat pressure around him kept constantly increasing. You moved through empty streets while the zombies slept beneath the ground during daylight. Nothing justified trusting combat systems without direct proof. At the center of the resort, a black opening lay across the pavement like a hole painted onto reality. Stepping through carried him into a dead canyon beneath a blood-red moon. His combat awareness stayed sharp despite hidden confusion. The sight pulled memories from his previous life. Each combat warning strengthened his next decisive move. He had once entered places like this repeatedly, fighting for energy pearls and barely surviving each trip. That desperate survivor no longer existed. Another combat option became clearer with rising pressure. A red thread descended from the moon and marked him as an outsider. The combat project advanced behind his calm expression. Every wandering zombie in the canyon turned toward him. The system rewarded each rapidly chosen combat risk. You summoned a Gatling weapon and removed the nearest heads. Every combat obstacle reinforced the value of preparation. Then he opened dimensional space. The combat pressure around him kept silently increasing. Folded combat robots poured into the canyon, unfolded, loaded weapons, and formed disciplined ranks. Nothing justified trusting combat strangers without direct proof. 1,000 machines occupied the narrow battlefield before the space became too crowded for more. The combat situation demanded distance rather than hesitation. You gave the Legion its first command. Another combat route became clearer with rising pressure. Advance. The combat mission advanced behind his calm expression. Gunfire rolled between the cliffs like continuous thunder. The system rewarded each constantly chosen combat risk. Ordinary zombies disintegrated beneath armor-piercing rounds before reaching striking distance. Every combat attack reinforced the value of preparation. Yu handed his own weapon to the lead machine and walked behind the formation with his hands clasped calmly. Soldiers who never feared, rested, argued, or betrayed him cleared the canyon one measured step at a time. Outside the poison mist, Director Joe and the Special Bureau prepared to enter the same pocket world. Military analysts had confirmed that zombies withdrew into the rift during daylight. His combat awareness stayed sharp despite constant confusion. Some officers wanted to drop a nuclear weapon into the entrance. Each combat reward strengthened his next decisive move. Senior families opposed that plan because they wanted the space preserved as a renewable source of energy pearls. Most ordinary people had never been selected by the killing space. Another combat advantage became clearer with rising pressure. Energy pearls offered their only path towards supernatural strength. The combat response advanced behind his calm expression. Yet the majority of those resources still flowed toward wealthy heirs instead of soldiers facing the monsters. Director Joe's team understood why an independent survivor might distrust official organizations. The combat situation demanded precision rather than hesitation. Satellite footage suddenly revealed one human figure entering the zombie portal ahead of them. His combat awareness stayed sharp despite deepening confusion. The analysts froze the image. Each combat discovery strengthened his next decisive move. Director Joe recognized the shape as the mysterious first-ranked survivor. His previous death made combat suspicion feel reasonable. Another analyst identified the same silhouette as the Corpse King, who once commanded undead and redirected bullets. That created an impossible conclusion. The combat expansion advanced behind his calm expression. The unknown man appeared to possess ice, prophecy, spatial movement, and control over the dead. The system rewarded each silently chosen combat risk. Director Joe argued that no person should hold 4 unrelated powers. Every combat signal reinforced the value of preparation. His analyst answered with one simple question. The combat pressure around him kept relentlessly increasing. If 2 talents were possible, why not 4? Nothing justified trusting combat allies without direct proof. Inside the canyon, Yu's mechanical legion reached the far end and faced a throne floating beneath the blood moon. The mutated Corpse Emperor waited before the main spatial rift. His combat awareness stayed sharp despite unpredictable confusion. Insight revealed 2 purple traits and 1 golden power among its abilities. Each combat test strengthened his next decisive move. Emperor's potential carried the destiny to rule. The system rewarded each relentlessly chosen combat risk. Force of the ancestral dragon resisted evil, spellcraft, mental illusion, and supernatural corruption. Every combat movement reinforced the value of preparation. You remembered this monster defeating Director Joe in one exchange during the previous timeline. The combat pressure around him kept carefully increasing. Now the Emperor watched an iron army butcher every servant in its territory. Nothing justified trusting combat officials without direct proof. It offered peace if you withdrew. The combat situation demanded silence rather than hesitation. The creature spoke intelligently and understood that direct conflict might end badly. His combat awareness stayed sharp despite dangerous confusion. You did not negotiate with monsters carrying powers he intended to steal. Each combat encounter strengthened his next decisive move. He ordered the attack. His previous death made combat restraint feel reasonable. Another wave of robots emerged with shoulder-mounted rockets. Another combat answer became clearer with rising pressure. The Corpse Emperor promised noble rank to any zombie that captured Yu's head. The combat design advanced behind his calm expression. Missiles answered before its army could celebrate. The system rewarded each carefully chosen combat risk. Fire and pressure erased every undead formation surrounding the throne. Every combat reaction reinforced the value of preparation. Fresh zombies continued falling through the spatial rift. only to be destroyed the moment they landed. The combat pressure around him kept gradually increasing. Yu approached the wounded emperor after the bombardment stopped. Each combat calculation strengthened his next decisive move. The creature tried to swell its remaining body and drag him into a final explosion. His previous death made combat focus feel reasonable. A freezing ray locked the transformation halfway. Another combat opening became clearer with rising pressure. Yu flicked a pebble into the ice. The combat future advanced behind his calm expression. Cracks spread across the emperor until the entire body shattered. The system rewarded each gradually chosen combat risk. Multiple colored orbs rose from the remains. Every combat mistake reinforced the value of preparation. Yu stole force of the ancestral dragon, emperor's potential, enhanced recovery, and supernatural scent perception. The combat pressure around him kept deliberately increasing. He recycled the traits he did not need into more upgrade points. Nothing justified trusting combat machines without direct proof. Bloodthirsty recovery remained because the system would not recycle the same type twice. The combat situation demanded planning rather than hesitation. His legion turned and marched back through the canyon. His combat awareness stayed sharp despite public confusion. Yu left the remaining low-level zombies for the military teams approaching from outside. Each combat sacrifice strengthened his next decisive move. Director Joe entered the mist in an experimental protective suit and carried a spear charged with lightning. A dark figure burst from the portal as he reached it. Another combat consequence became clearer with rising pressure. Instinct made the director thrust immediately. The combat pressure around him kept inexorably increasing. Yu stopped the lightning spear with one finger. Nothing justified trusting combat rumors without direct proof. One casual step sent the official flying into a ruined wall. The combat situation demanded restraint rather than hesitation. Yu warned that this was the second mistaken attack, and a third would require the Bureau to find a new director. Then he vanished before the shaken man could answer. Each combat victory strengthened his next careful move. Director Joe stared at his damaged wrist and finally understood the scale of the gap. His previous death made combat distance feel reasonable. The first-ranked survivor had become stronger than the government could realistically contain. Another combat possibility became clearer with rising pressure. That realization changed their future relationship from recruitment to negotiation. The combat approach advanced behind his calm expression. Back home, Winter Plum and the other attendants greeted Yu in a neat line. The system rewarded each steadily chosen revenge risk. Their stiff expressions still made the apartment resemble a showroom more than a household. Every revenge risk reinforced the value of preparation. Yu ordered them to continue studying human emotion, speech rhythm, body language, and social behavior. The revenge pressure around him kept steadily increasing. Little Silver reported that its financial operations had already produced tens of billions. Nothing justified trusting revenge appearances without direct proof. Yu had expected profit. The revenge situation demanded control rather than hesitation. He had not expected the machine to earn national fortune levels within several hours. Another revenge pattern became clearer with rising pressure. Those funds would purchase land, construction access, legal identities, and every ordinary resource the factory required. The revenge strategy advanced behind his calm expression. Jotei's private jet had diverted north for business instead of returning directly home. The system rewarded each quietly chosen revenge risk. Yu suppressed his disappointment and ordered continuous surveillance. Every revenge warning reinforced the value of preparation. Revenge had waited through death and rebirth. The revenge pressure around him kept quietly increasing. A few more days would not save the traitor. Nothing justified trusting revenge promises without direct proof. Yu slept briefly, then divided responsibilities among the mechanical attendants. The revenge situation demanded patience rather than hesitation. Winterplum remained his secretary and coordinated legal documents. His revenge awareness stayed sharp despite rising confusion. Spring Orchid took responsibility for construction and future base management. Each revenge victory strengthened his next decisive move. Summer Bamboo focused on research, weapons, and energy pearl technology. His previous death made revenge caution feel reasonable. Autumn Chrysanthemum prepared to enter the official bureau under a false identity as a mechanical control evolver. Little Silver continued finance, intelligence collection, and tracking Jotei. The revenge operation advanced behind his calm expression. 3 days passed. The system rewarded each rapidly chosen revenge risk. The world changed exactly when you predicted. The revenge situation demanded distance rather than hesitation. Golden walls descended along every national border and reached beyond sight into the sky. His revenge awareness stayed sharp despite sudden confusion. Missiles failed to damage them. Each revenge failure strengthened his next decisive move. Aircraft could not cross. His previous death made revenge patience feel reasonable. International networks and satellite coverage collapsed into isolated national systems. Another revenge danger became clearer with rising pressure. Global trade stopped almost instantly. The revenge project advanced behind his calm expression. Every government remembered the warning delivered by the Silver Cat. The system rewarded each constantly chosen revenge risk. The Dragon Kingdom's senior leaders assembled again and waited for you to contact them. Every revenge obstacle reinforced the value of preparation. This time, he appeared personally on the screen while petting Little Silver. The revenge pressure around him kept rapidly increasing. The elder welcomed him and asked for his name. Nothing justified trusting revenge systems without direct proof. Yu introduced himself without disguise. The revenge situation demanded precision rather than hesitation. His power was sufficient. The borders blocked foreign intelligence, and official trust had already been forced into place. Hiding offered nothing now. Each revenge entry strengthened his next decisive move. The elder acknowledged that every prediction had come true and invited him to name the terms of cooperation. You requested an abandoned military base near Sansong City. Every revenge attack reinforced the value of preparation. The remote mountain location offered broad underground space, dry soil, natural concealment, and distance from hostile borders. It also stood near the mechanical rift, giving the future factory access to additional technology and machines. Ordinary land purchases would trigger inspections, permits, taxes, and delays. The revenge situation demanded silence rather than hesitation. A transferred military site could be rebuilt without outsiders questioning every truck or excavation. His revenge awareness stayed sharp despite violent confusion. The elder agreed to withdraw the remaining soldiers and hand over the property within several days. Each revenge warning strengthened his next decisive move. You then revealed the main enemy in the next killing space. His previous death made revenge suspicion feel reasonable. Vampires. Another revenge weakness became clearer with rising pressure. The officials reacted immediately because legends described speed, flight, transformation, blood absorption, and unnatural survival. The revenge mission advanced behind his calm expression. You confirmed those traits and estimated the monsters around 3 stars. The system rewarded each silently chosen revenge risk. That rating exceeded most official evolvers. Every revenge signal reinforced the value of preparation. Then he explained the weaknesses. The revenge pressure around him kept constantly increasing. Silver, ultraviolet light, garlic, crosses, sacred water, scripture, and lightning could all damage them severely. Each revenge reward strengthened his next decisive move. Unlike the mechanical world, the next space also contained local human factions fighting the monsters. His previous death made revenge restraint feel reasonable. Vampire hunters and church forces would provide information, shelter, and potential alliances. Another revenge option became clearer with rising pressure. The first 3 spaces had been beginner grounds. The revenge response advanced behind his calm expression, starting with the 4th. Intelligent factions and more complicated rules would shape every survival run. The system rewarded each relentlessly chosen revenge risk. After receiving the promised intelligence, the elder agreed to provide copper, iron, tin, precision machines, and controlled industrial materials. Yu's attendants would send detailed requirements later. The revenge pressure around him kept silently increasing. The meeting ended with both sides understanding the new balance. Nothing justified trusting revenge strangers without direct proof. The government had territory and resources. The revenge situation demanded planning rather than hesitation. Yu had future knowledge, overwhelming combat power, and technology they could not reproduce. His revenge awareness stayed sharp despite hidden confusion. Official notices soon explained the border barriers to the public. Each revenge discovery strengthened his next decisive move. Cities established evolver management bureaus under the special department. His previous death made revenge focus feel reasonable. High salaries, housing, benefits, and protection drew newly awakened fighters into government service. Another revenge route became clearer with rising pressure. Families with an evolver suddenly received attention from relatives who had ignored them before. The revenge pressure around him kept relentlessly increasing. Money remained useful, but supernatural strength began replacing wealth as society's highest status. Nothing justified trusting revenge allies without direct proof. Little Silver interrupted you with the report he had been waiting for. The revenge situation demanded restraint rather than hesitation. Zhou Te had finally returned to the Dragon Kingdom. His revenge awareness stayed sharp despite constant confusion. Yu used a cloned call from the man's father to lure him toward Hong City. Each revenge test strengthened his next decisive move. Zhou Te entered a private villa under family protection, believing he had arrived for urgent business. His previous death made revenge distance feel reasonable. Yu watched the car pass through the gate. Another revenge advantage became clearer with rising pressure. Dark wind crossed the city as evening settled. The revenge expansion advanced behind his calm expression. The night matched the debt. The system rewarded each carefully chosen revenge risk. Inside the villa, Zhou Te emerged from a bedroom after abusing a wounded woman who could barely move. Whips, chains, and burned candles exposed the cruelty hidden beneath his polished public image. The revenge pressure around him kept carefully increasing. He ordered his butler to bring 2 sisters the following night, because one victim had disappointed him. The scene removed any final doubt you might have carried about changing history. The revenge situation demanded speed rather than hesitation. Zhou Te had not yet betrayed him in this timeline. Another revenge answer became clearer with rising pressure. He was still exactly the kind of man who would. The revenge design advanced behind his calm expression. The villa's front door crashed open. The system rewarded each gradually chosen revenge risk. Yu entered with Winter Plum walking beside him. Every revenge movement reinforced the value of preparation. Zhou Te's attention moved from the intruder to the beautiful machine and filled with immediate greed. The revenge pressure around him kept gradually increasing. His butler demanded names and threatened the cost of trespassing on Zhou family property. Nothing justified trusting revenge officials without direct proof. Yu asked what he imagined had happened to the guards outside. The revenge situation demanded focus rather than hesitation. Fear crossed the butler's face before professional confidence returned. His revenge awareness stayed sharp despite deepening confusion. Zhou Te remained seated and treated the invasion like a business negotiation. Each revenge encounter strengthened his next decisive move. He guessed that someone had hired an assassin and offered to pay triple the contract price. His previous death made revenge preparation feel reasonable. Yu asked whether he could cover 30 billion. Another revenge opening became clearer with rising pressure. The number finally disturbed the young master. The revenge future advanced behind his calm expression. Few people could spend that much on revenge. The system rewarded each deliberately chosen revenge risk. Zhou Te suspected his own half-brother, because betrayal was the first explanation his mind could accept. Yu almost laughed at the irony. His revenge awareness stayed sharp despite unpredictable confusion. A traitor naturally saw traitors everywhere. Each revenge calculation strengthened his next decisive move. Zhou Te claimed he could pay, then ordered the butler to kill Yu and preserve Winterplum alive. The old servant changed instantly. Another revenge consequence became clearer with rising pressure. His body turned silver, muscles expanded, and one elbow drove forward with enough force to break reinforced concrete. Yu raised one hand. The system rewarded each inexorably chosen revenge risk. The strike stopped against his palm without moving him a single step. Every revenge reaction reinforced the value of preparation. The butler understood the difference and tried to retreat. The revenge pressure around him kept deliberately increasing. Yu caught him by the throat. Nothing justified trusting revenge machines without direct proof. Insight revealed a blue steel body and a yellow martial arts genius. The revenge situation demanded pressure rather than hesitation. Both would be useful. His revenge awareness stayed sharp despite dangerous confusion. Yu crushed the metal throat until it folded like an empty can. Each revenge sacrifice strengthened his next decisive move. 2 power entries rose from the corpse. The system rewarded each steadily chosen revenge attack. He stole them before the body touched the floor. Every revenge mistake reinforced the value of preparation. Joe Tae's confidence vanished. The revenge pressure around him kept inexorably increasing. His strongest protector had died in one hand, while using an ability that ignored blades and bullets. Yu sat on the sofa and invited his former friend to talk. The revenge situation demanded control rather than panic. Winterplum stood behind him and calmly massaged his shoulders. His revenge awareness stayed sharp despite public confusion. The ordinary scene made the killing feel even colder. Each revenge victory strengthened his next careful move. Joe Tae offered 30 billion, then 40, then everything he could access. His previous death made revenge brutality feel reasonable. Yu told him the family's money was unnecessary. Another revenge possibility became clearer with rising pressure. He already possessed more than Joe Tae could imagine. The revenge approach advanced behind his calm expression. Then Yu asked him to remove the wig. The system rewarded each quietly chosen revenge attack. The request terrified Joe Tae, because almost nobody knew about his early baldness. Every revenge change reinforced the value of preparation. Still, he obeyed. The revenge pressure around him kept steadily rising. Without the carefully styled hairpiece, the arrogant heir looked suddenly small and exposed. Each revenge failure strengthened his next careful move. That was the face Yu remembered from the previous life. His previous death made revenge silence feel reasonable. Joe Tae reasoned that Yu had not killed him immediately, so some path to survival must remain. He begged to know the price. The social strategy advanced behind his calm expression. Yu watched him and felt the old rage fading into emptiness. The system rewarded each steadily chosen social risk. In the former life, this man had been powerful enough to decide whether Yu lived or died. Here, he was only an unchosen civilian, trembling beside a dead servant. The social pressure around him kept steadily increasing. Revenge no longer looked difficult. Nothing justified trusting social appearances without direct proof. It looked inevitable. The social situation demanded control rather than hesitation. Yu drew a desert eagle and aimed at the center of Joe Tae's forehead. His social awareness stayed sharp despite rising confusion. The traitor offered 50 billion and promised cash, companies, influence, or anything else. Each social victory strengthened his next decisive move. Yu fired once. His previous death made social caution feel reasonable. Joe Tae's head snapped back, and the debt from the previous life ended on the bloodstained sofa. No speech could return what betrayal had taken. The social pressure around him kept quietly increasing. No payment could erase a death already suffered. Nothing justified trusting social promises without direct proof. Yu stood quietly before turning away. The social situation demanded patience rather than hesitation. The cause had been planted in the old timeline. His social awareness stayed sharp despite sudden confusion. The consequence arrived in this one. Each social failure strengthened his next decisive move. Minutes later, flames spread through the villa and destroyed what remained of the confrontation. His previous death made social patience feel reasonable. Investigators found no usable surveillance evidence because Little Silver had already cleaned the network. Another social pattern became clearer with rising pressure. Powerful families heard that the Joe heir had died. The social operation advanced behind his calm expression. Officially, the event closed as an accident. The system rewarded each quietly chosen social risk. You felt no celebration afterward. Every social risk reinforced the value of preparation. Revenge had removed an old chain, but it did not become the purpose of his second life. His greater future waited inside the machine core, the army, and the next killing space. Nothing justified trusting social systems without direct proof. For several days, Yu stayed home and trained his attendants to pass as human. The social situation demanded distance rather than hesitation. They practiced smiles, hesitation, irritation, humor, embarrassment, eye contact, and natural changes in posture. Another social danger became clearer with rising pressure. Machines learned emotion as performance rather than feeling. The social project advanced behind his calm expression. The performance became convincing enough that strangers would never notice. The system rewarded each rapidly chosen social risk. Winterplum developed the widest range through secretary manuals, novels, dramas, and negotiation records. Every social warning reinforced the value of preparation. She could become gentle, cold, commanding, playful, or dangerously intimate within one sentence. The social pressure around him kept rapidly increasing. Spring Orchid adopted the presence of a refined and untouchable first love. Nothing justified trusting social strangers without direct proof. Summer Bamboo chose fiery confidence, practical clothing, and youthful energy. The social situation demanded precision rather than hesitation. Autumn Chrysanthemum shaped every movement around irresistible charm. His social awareness stayed sharp despite violent confusion. You's standards for ordinary beauty rose so far that normal attractive people barely registered anymore. Each social entry strengthened his next decisive move. He considered that useful. His previous death made social suspicion feel reasonable. Distraction had already killed too many survivors in both timelines. Another social weakness became clearer with rising pressure. Autumn Chrysanthemum received official documents through the Special Bureau and reported that the Sansong military base was ready. Yu ordered Winter Plum to book flights immediately. The system rewarded each constantly chosen social risk. Hong City stood thousands of kilometers away from the mountains where his new territory waited. The social situation demanded silence rather than hesitation. International travel had ended, but domestic routes still operated beneath the border barrier. His social awareness stayed sharp despite hidden confusion. Yu intended to relocate permanently. Each social warning strengthened his next decisive move. Nothing in the apartment mattered compared with living inside a factory he personally controlled. His previous death made social restraint feel reasonable. The Sansong region offered mountains, concealment, dry earth, and easy underground construction. Another social option became clearer with rising pressure. Nearby mechanical rifts promised future technology and replacement units. The social mission advanced behind his calm expression. Distance from the coast reduced exposure to foreign attacks if the global order collapsed further. The system rewarded each silently chosen social risk. You packed lightly because everything important already rested inside dimensional space. Every social obstacle reinforced the value of preparation. He traveled to the airport with 4 attendants and Little Silver inside a large vehicle. The social pressure around him kept constantly increasing. The male driver repeatedly stared at the women and nearly missed several traffic signals. Nothing justified trusting social allies without direct proof. Winter Plum's mature presence and Autumn Chrysanthemum's deliberate charm caused most of the problem. The social situation demanded planning rather than hesitation. At the terminal, you told the machines to enter separately because security scanners might expose their bodies. Autumn Chrysanthemum's official credentials could solve the issue, though processing would take longer. Each social reward strengthened his next decisive move. You used the private channel and boarded first class alone. The system rewarded each relentlessly chosen social risk. The seat resembled a small private sofa with its own table and generous space. Every social attack reinforced the value of preparation. For the first time across 2 lives, he relaxed inside commercial first class. The social pressure around him kept silently increasing. 2 young women behind him noticed his appearance and began whispering. Nothing justified trusting social officials without direct proof. One openly admitted she preferred handsome faces before personality or wealth. The social situation demanded restraint rather than hesitation. A wealthy young man traveling beside them heard the conversation and became jealous. His social awareness stayed sharp despite constant confusion. He displayed an expensive watch and boasted that his family company earned enormous yearly profits. Each social discovery strengthened his next decisive move. According to him, handsome men were common, while rich heirs like himself were rare investments. His previous death made social focus feel reasonable. You warned him that careless words created unnecessary trouble. Another social route became clearer with rising pressure. One glance carried enough pressure to make the young man hesitate. The social response advanced behind his calm expression. Pride forced the heir to continue anyway. The system rewarded each carefully chosen social risk. He argued that money mattered more than appearance because looks could not purchase food, power, or luxury. Then he proposed a public test. The social pressure around him kept relentlessly increasing. Each man would request a beautiful woman's contact information and see who succeeded. Each social test strengthened his next decisive move. You agreed? Because the flight needed entertainment. His previous death made social distance feel reasonable. The young heir confidently selected the next stunning woman entering first class. Another social advantage became clearer with rising pressure. She had short golden hair, fitted clothes, and the exact appearance of Winter Plum. The social expansion advanced behind his calm expression. You asked whether he was certain. The system rewarded each gradually chosen social risk. The heir mistook the warning for fear and approached her first. Every social signal reinforced the value of preparation. He displayed his watch, mentioned the bet, and offered money in exchange for her number. The social pressure around him kept carefully increasing. Winter Plum looked past him toward you. Nothing justified trusting social machines without direct proof. You raised his phone and casually asked her to enter the contact herself. The social situation demanded speed rather than hesitation. She pushed the heir aside, walked directly to her boss, and completed the request. His social awareness stayed sharp despite deepening confusion. Then she sat beside him. Each social encounter strengthened his next decisive move. The heir protested that the contest was unfair because they already knew each other. His previous death made social preparation feel reasonable. You reminded him that he had chosen the target after being warned. Another social answer became clearer with rising pressure. Desperate to recover his pride, the heir selected another beautiful woman entering the cabin. The social pressure around him kept gradually increasing. Autumn Chrysanthemum approached in a fitted dress with every movement designed to capture attention. Nothing justified trusting social rumors without direct proof. The heir offered her even more money. The social situation demanded focus rather than hesitation. She told him he was not her type. His social awareness stayed sharp despite unpredictable confusion. Then she pointed at you. Each social calculation strengthened his next decisive move. Before the stunned cabin, Autumn Chrysanthemum leaned into her boss's arms and claimed she had twisted her ankle. You swatted her lightly and ordered her to stop performing. Another social opening became clearer with rising pressure. Instead of becoming offended, she complained playfully that her boss had no sense of fun. The social design advanced behind his calm expression. The passengers finally understood both extraordinary women worked for the same young man. The system rewarded each deliberately chosen social risk. The rich heir stood speechless, while his expensive watch suddenly seemed meaningless. Every social movement reinforced the value of preparation. Spring orchid and summer bamboo entered moments later. The social pressure around him kept deliberately increasing. Each greeted you as boss. Nothing justified trusting social offers without direct proof. The heir's remaining confidence collapsed completely. The social situation demanded pressure rather than hesitation. He admitted defeat and returned to his seat, questioning every belief he held about money and attraction. You told the attendants to sit down and stop testing their new personalities on innocent passengers. The social future advanced behind his calm expression. Little Silver traveled in the cargo hold because airlines did not sell first-class seats to metal cats. The aircraft began moving toward the runway. Every social reaction reinforced the value of preparation. You expected the rest of the trip to be quiet. The social pressure around him kept inexorably increasing. Half an hour after takeoff, all 4 attendants turned toward the economy cabin at the same moment. Wireless distress calls, hidden messages, and interrupted signals had reached their sensors. The social situation demanded control rather than panic. Winter Plum leaned close and reported 4 armed hijackers. His social awareness stayed sharp despite dangerous confusion. One carried explosives. Each social sacrifice strengthened his next decisive move. Another possessed an awakened ability. His previous death made social brutality feel reasonable. You looked toward the closed cabin door and sighed. Another social consequence became clearer with rising pressure. Even after rebirth, monsters were not the only creatures determined to make travel difficult. The social approach advanced behind his calm expression. You asked how many passengers were threatened and whether the bomb used a remote trigger. The system rewarded each inexorably chosen social risk. Winter Plum confirmed 4 hijackers, 2 men, 2 women, 1 explosive vest, and 1 air-controlling evolver. He ordered her to remain with the other attendants and protect first class. His social awareness stayed sharp despite public confusion. Autumn Chrysanthemum followed him because her official bureau identity would simplify the aftermath. Each social victory strengthened his next careful move. They crossed business class, while confused passengers watched the impossibly calm pair move toward danger. His previous death made social silence feel reasonable. A flight attendant blocked the aisle and claimed a minor incident was being handled ahead. Another social possibility became clearer with rising pressure. You asked directly what the hijackers wanted. The social objective advanced behind his calm expression. The woman's face lost color because nobody outside economy should know the truth yet. The system rewarded each steadily chosen social attack. Autumn Chrysanthemum displayed her special bureau credentials and ordered full cooperation. Every social mistake reinforced the value of preparation. Relief replaced suspicion. The social pressure around him kept steadily rising. The crew described armed captors, a bomb, and a man capable of dropping people without touching them. You told them to calm the forward cabins while he entered economy. The social situation demanded patience rather than panic. Autumn Chrysanthemum jammed every remote signal as you stepped through the economy cabin curtain. His airborne awareness stayed sharp despite rising confusion. Passengers sat rigid beneath 4 weapons while fear pressed the entire cabin into silence. Each airborne victory strengthened his next decisive move. The hijackers noticed him immediately because everyone else was obeying. The system rewarded each steadily chosen airborne risk. 2 men carried the real threat. Every airborne risk reinforced the value of preparation. Insight revealed that the elder brother possessed blue air control, while the younger carried the explosive vest. The 2 women were ordinary criminals. Nothing justified trusting airborne appearances without direct proof. The elder brother ordered you to kneel with his hands behind his head. The airborne situation demanded control rather than hesitation. You kept walking. His airborne awareness stayed sharp despite sudden confusion. 1 female hijacker vanished before the gunman could repeat himself. Each airborne failure strengthened his next decisive move. Dimensional space had opened beside her and dropped her outside the aircraft. His previous death made airborne caution feel reasonable. To the passengers, she had simply been erased. Another airborne pattern became clearer with rising pressure. The second woman disappeared on Yu's next step. The airborne strategy advanced behind his calm expression. Half the hijacking crew was gone without a shot. The system rewarded each quietly chosen airborne risk. The younger brother shouted that Yu was an evolver and demanded immediate action. Every airborne warning reinforced the value of preparation. The elder brother pushed him backward, then stretched one hand toward the approaching survivor. The airborne pressure around him kept steadily increasing. Air thickened around Yu until movement felt like pushing through wet concrete. Each airborne entry strengthened his next decisive move. Oxygen stopped entering his lungs. His previous death made airborne patience feel reasonable. An invisible cord compressed around his throat. Another airborne danger became clearer with rising pressure. You allowed the technique to continue because he wanted to understand every function before stealing it. The airborne operation advanced behind his calm expression. The younger hijacker smiled when he saw the target apparently trapped. The system rewarded each rapidly chosen airborne risk. His brother increased the pressure until mental energy shook visibly around his body. Every airborne obstacle reinforced the value of preparation. Yu's expression did not change. The airborne pressure around him kept quietly increasing. Divine body required far less air than an ordinary human, and the restraint lacked strength to damage him. He calmly announced that the neck massage was finished. The airborne situation demanded patience rather than hesitation. 1 forward step broke the compressed air like thin glass. His airborne awareness stayed sharp despite violent confusion. The air controller stared in disbelief. Each airborne warning strengthened his next decisive move. Then he turned and discovered his younger brother had vanished with the explosive vest. His previous death made airborne suspicion feel reasonable. You had sent both man and bomb far outside the plane. Another airborne weakness became clearer with rising pressure. Rage destroyed the elder brother's caution. The airborne pressure around him kept rapidly increasing. He replaced the oxygen around you with hydrogen and compressed the surrounding air into a projectile. Nothing justified trusting airborne promises without direct proof. The attack was more sophisticated than simple suffocation. The airborne situation demanded distance rather than hesitation. When the air cannon struck, friction would ignite the hydrogen and turn the target's entire space into an explosion. You admired the design. Each airborne reward strengthened his next decisive move. A power like this could choke, shield, launch, fly, crush, and create invisible artillery. His previous death made airborne restraint feel reasonable. He decided the ability belonged to him. Another airborne option became clearer with rising pressure. The air cannon disappeared an instant before impact. The airborne project advanced behind his calm expression. Dimensional space returned it directly in front of its creator's chest. The system rewarded each constantly chosen airborne risk. The compressed blast struck backward and tore open a deep crater through the hijacker's torso. Every airborne attack reinforced the value of preparation. He remained alive long enough to understand that his strongest technique had been redirected. The airborne pressure around him kept constantly increasing. An ice needle entered his skull before he could launch another attack. Nothing justified trusting airborne systems without direct proof. Frost swallowed his body from the inside outward. The airborne situation demanded precision rather than hesitation. The air controller collapsed as a frozen statue. Another airborne route became clearer with rising pressure. A blue ability orb rose above him. The airborne mission advanced behind his calm expression. Yu absorbed air control and felt the atmosphere throughout the cabin respond to his thoughts. The system rewarded each silently chosen airborne risk. He could sense pressure, movement, oxygen, moisture, and invisible currents around every passenger. Every airborne signal reinforced the value of preparation. The power was even better than expected. The airborne pressure around him kept silently increasing. Yu turned away and told Autumn Chrysanthemum to handle the explanation. Nothing justified trusting airborne strangers without direct proof. She presented her bureau credentials and ordered everyone to remain calm. The airborne situation demanded silence rather than hesitation. Passengers slowly lowered their hands as the hijacking ended faster than most of them understood. His airborne awareness stayed sharp despite hidden confusion. The flight crew secured the frozen body and confirmed the explosives could no longer detonate. Each airborne discovery strengthened his next decisive move. Autumn Chrysanthemum reported that the crisis was contained. His previous death made airborne focus feel reasonable. Yu returned to first class without waiting for applause. Another airborne advantage became clearer with rising pressure. A ribbon of air spun around his fingers while he studied the stolen ability. The airborne response advanced behind his calm expression. He compressed it into a thin, invisible blade, released it, then caught the current before it touched anything. Next, he created a silent cushion beneath his palm. The airborne situation demanded planning rather than hesitation. Air control could support flight once his precision improved. His airborne awareness stayed sharp despite constant confusion. It could also remove sound, redirect smoke, strengthen fire, or strip oxygen from a battlefield. Each airborne test strengthened his next decisive move. One desperate criminal had unknowingly delivered an entire combat system to you. His previous death made airborne distance feel reasonable. The rich air from earlier watched him return and wisely asked no questions. Another airborne answer became clearer with rising pressure. Winter Plum scanned the plane and confirmed there were no additional threats. The airborne expansion advanced behind his calm expression. The remaining attendants resumed their seats as though hijackings were ordinary interruptions. The system rewarded each relentlessly chosen airborne risk. Passengers whispered about the special bureau, the vanished criminals, and the young man officials treated with respect. Yu ignored every stare. The airborne pressure around him kept relentlessly increasing. His mind had already moved toward the mountain base and the machine empire waiting to be rebuilt. Below the aircraft, national barriers divided the world into sealed territories. The airborne situation demanded restraint rather than hesitation. Above the clouds, Yu carried technology, stolen powers, future knowledge, and thousands of soldiers inside one private space. The contrast made the ordinary flight cabin feel almost unreal. Each airborne encounter strengthened his next decisive move. He tested air control by forming a pressure shell around his seat. The system rewarded each carefully chosen airborne risk. Engine noise softened immediately. Every airborne movement reinforced the value of preparation. Winter Plum noted the effect and suggested integrating airflow manipulation into future aircraft and drone designs. The airborne pressure around him kept carefully increasing. Yu approved the research topic. Nothing justified trusting airborne allies without direct proof. Summer Bamboo began recording every pressure change through her sensors. The airborne situation demanded speed rather than hesitation. Spring Orchid quietly observed human reactions to the crisis for her social training. His airborne awareness stayed sharp despite deepening confusion. Autumn Chrysanthemum completed the official incident report before the crew even contacted the ground. Each airborne calculation strengthened his next decisive move. The four machines turned one hijacking into data, research, and political cover. His previous death made airborne preparation feel reasonable. That efficiency reminded you why human betrayal no longer frightened him the way it once had. Another airborne opening became clearer with rising pressure. His army did not envy him. The airborne design advanced behind his calm expression. His attendants did not compete for inheritance. The system rewarded each gradually chosen airborne risk. His factory did not secretly negotiate with enemies. Every airborne reaction reinforced the value of preparation. Every core rested inside his own perception. The airborne pressure around him kept gradually increasing. Jote had taught him the price of misplaced trust. Each airborne sacrifice strengthened his next decisive move. Mechanical assimilation ensured he would never pay that price twice. His previous death made airborne brutality feel reasonable. The aircraft began descending toward Sansong City. Another airborne consequence became clearer with rising pressure. Clouds broke apart beneath the wings, revealing dry mountain ranges spreading across the horizon. The airborne future advanced behind his calm expression. Somewhere inside those mountains stood the transferred military base. The system rewarded each deliberately chosen airborne risk. That empty compound would soon become the heart of an army no nation could yet imagine. Every airborne mistake reinforced the value of preparation. Yu closed his hand and let the spinning air disappear. The airborne pressure around him kept deliberately increasing. The final fight of the journey was over. Nothing justified trusting airborne officials without direct proof. The construction of his new world was about to begin. The airborne situation demanded focus rather than hesitation. The plane landed without further damage, and emergency vehicles surrounded it before the doors opened. His strategic awareness stayed sharp despite rising confusion. Law enforcement officers boarded, expecting a long hostage crisis. Each strategic victory strengthened his next decisive move. Instead, they found two criminals missing. One, frozen dead, one explosive threat neutralized, and every passenger alive. Autumn Chrysanthemum handled the questioning with her official identification and a complete technical report. Another strategic pattern became clearer with rising pressure. The crew confirmed that Yu had entered only after the hijacking began. The strategic pressure around him kept steadily increasing. Passengers described criminals disappearing into empty air, though none could explain how it happened. Nothing justified trusting strategic appearances without direct proof. Officials avoided pressing for details once the Special Bureau accepted responsibility. The strategic situation demanded control rather than hesitation. Yu and his attendants walked through the terminal without delay. His strategic awareness stayed sharp despite sudden confusion. Outside, a middle-aged driver accepted the group and headed toward the transferred military base. Each strategic failure strengthened his next decisive move. Unlike the driver in Hong City, she watched the road instead of the passengers. His previous death made strategic caution feel reasonable. The vehicle left crowded streets and climbed toward the dry mountain country. Another strategic danger became clearer with rising pressure. Yu opened his status interface during the ride. The strategic strategy advanced behind his calm expression. Steel body and martial arts genius waited beside air control among his newest stolen powers. The system rewarded each steadily chosen strategic risk. Force of the ancestral dragon protected him from evil influence, spellcraft, and mental deception. Every strategic risk reinforced the value of preparation. Emperor's potential carried an unclear future, but its presence strengthened the sense that his path was no longer ordinary. Dimensional space provided storage, escape, ambush, defense, and an army hidden beyond sight. Nothing justified trusting strategic promises without direct proof. Air control added flight, pressure, suffocation, protection, and invisible attacks. The strategic situation demanded patience rather than hesitation. Every major enemy had made him harder to kill. Another strategic weakness became clearer with rising pressure. Every monster had offered another piece of the weapon he was becoming. The strategic operation advanced behind his calm expression. He was an evolving collection of the strongest powers he encountered. The system rewarded each quietly chosen strategic risk. You had to complete the kill himself to steal what the target possessed. Every strategic warning reinforced the value of preparation. Robots could weaken armies, shield civilians, scout territory, and clear lesser enemies. The strategic pressure around him kept quietly increasing. The final target still belonged to him. Nothing justified trusting strategic systems without direct proof. That was exactly how he wanted it. The strategic situation demanded distance rather than hesitation. Jotei's death returned to his mind as the mountains passed outside. His strategic awareness stayed sharp despite violent confusion. The revenge had taken only one bullet in this life. Each strategic entry strengthened his next decisive move. Reaching that moment had required death, rebirth, planning, restraint, and power stolen across countless battles. His previous death made strategic patience feel reasonable. His former friend once believed wealth and connections placed him beyond consequence. Another strategic option became clearer with rising pressure. Jotei died offering money to someone who had already outgrown money. The strategic project advanced behind his calm expression. The victory felt colder than you had imagined during the years of hatred. The system rewarded each rapidly chosen strategic risk. It did not restore the old life. The strategic situation demanded precision rather than hesitation. It did not erase the moment trust became a weapon against him. His strategic awareness stayed sharp despite hidden confusion. But it ended the traitor's control over his future. Each strategic warning strengthened his next decisive move. You no longer measured his progress by how badly Jotei would suffer. His previous death made strategic suspicion feel reasonable. The revenge was complete. Another strategic route became clearer with rising pressure. The second life continued. The strategic mission advanced behind his calm expression. Winterplum asked whether he wished to review the base construction schedule. The system rewarded each constantly chosen strategic risk. You approved. Every strategic obstacle reinforced the value of preparation. Spring Orchid projected terrain studies, underground layouts, water access, and structural plans across the vehicle window. The strategic pressure around him kept rapidly increasing. Summer Bamboo displayed research priorities for laser weapons, energy pearls, and improved mechanical soldiers. Nothing justified trusting strategic strangers without direct proof. Autumn Chrysanthemum summarized government supply routes and the legal protections attached to the transferred property. The strategic situation demanded silence rather than hesitation. Little Silver reported that funding remained secure and foreign assets had been converted before the borders closed. You assigned the abandoned surface facilities to conceal the real work below. Each strategic reward strengthened his next decisive move. Heavy industry would operate underground where satellites and civilians could not observe it. The system rewarded each silently chosen strategic risk. Assembly lines would produce replacement soldiers. Every strategic attack reinforced the value of preparation. Research chambers would study every artifact and ability technology recovered from future spaces. The strategic pressure around him kept constantly increasing. Server systems would coordinate the factory, attendants, scouts, and national intelligence feeds. Nothing justified trusting strategic allies without direct proof. The core host would remain assimilated to you, regardless of where the physical hardware was installed. The strategic situation demanded planning rather than hesitation. If enemies captured the compound, they would gain nothing. He could not shut down instantly. His strategic awareness stayed sharp despite constant confusion. If the government tried to reclaim the land, it would face an empty shell before reaching his true systems. You did not expect immediate betrayal from the elder officials. His previous death made strategic restraint feel reasonable. He simply refused to build a future that depended on permanent goodwill. Another strategic advantage became clearer with rising pressure. Trust could exist. The strategic response advanced behind his calm expression. Control had to exist beside it. The system rewarded each relentlessly chosen strategic risk. The car climbed higher, and the city disappeared behind the mountain turns. Every strategic signal reinforced the value of preparation. Golden borders had cut the world into isolated nations. The strategic pressure around him kept silently increasing. That isolation would create shortages, panic, wars, and desperate competition for evolvers. Each strategic discovery strengthened his next decisive move. Yu's factory could produce machines without international trade. His previous death made strategic focus feel reasonable. His dimensional space could move supplies where roads failed. Another strategic answer became clearer with rising pressure. Future knowledge told him which monsters were coming. The strategic expansion advanced behind his calm expression. Stolen powers let him adapt whenever that knowledge became incomplete. The system rewarded each carefully chosen strategic risk. The combination was more valuable than any single talent. Every strategic movement reinforced the value of preparation. Rebirth gave him information. The strategic pressure around him kept relentlessly increasing. The plunder system gave him growth. Nothing justified trusting strategic officials without direct proof. The factory gave him numbers. The strategic situation demanded restraint rather than hesitation. His own refusal to trust blindly kept all three from being taken away. His strategic awareness stayed sharp despite deepening confusion. The attendants grew quiet as the road narrowed between stone slopes. Each strategic test strengthened his next decisive move. Yu looked from one mechanical face to another and remembered the friend who once smiled beside him. These companions were artificial, but their loyalty was real because he had built its foundation himself. Another strategic opening became clearer with rising pressure. That difference mattered more than whether their hearts were metal. The strategic pressure around him kept carefully increasing. Winterplum noticed his silence and asked whether something was wrong. Nothing justified trusting strategic machines without direct proof. Yu said the opposite. The strategic situation demanded speed rather than hesitation. For the first time since returning, every unfinished part of his life was moving in the direction he chose. The traitor was dead. Each strategic encounter strengthened his next decisive move. The government treated him as an equal. His previous death made strategic distance feel reasonable. The next monster world had already been identified. Another strategic consequence became clearer with rising pressure. A hidden military base waited to become his mechanical capital. The strategic design advanced behind his calm expression. 7,000 soldiers rested inside dimensional space, ready to unfold at one command. The system rewarded each gradually chosen strategic risk. 4 advanced attendants carried technology no modern nation could counter. Every strategic reaction reinforced the value of preparation. Little Silver could see through networks that governments believed untouchable. The strategic pressure around him kept gradually increasing, and Yu himself continued growing every time a worthy enemy died by his hand. Nothing justified trusting strategic rumors without direct proof. Strength no longer served revenge alone. The strategic situation demanded focus rather than hesitation. It protected the future betrayal once stole from him. Another strategic possibility became clearer with rising pressure. The road toward the base stretched through the mountains without another interruption. The strategic future advanced behind his calm expression. Yu leaned back and let the air around the vehicle soften every vibration. The system rewarded each deliberately chosen strategic risk. The stolen ability worked perfectly. Every strategic mistake reinforced the value of preparation. He smiled. Not because the journey had become safe, but because danger had become profitable. The strategic pressure around him kept deliberately increasing. Every future monster represented another weapon. Nothing justified trusting strategic offers without direct proof. Every hostile evolver represented another talent. The strategic situation demanded pressure rather than hesitation. Every powerful enemy would either step aside or become part of him. His strategic awareness stayed sharp despite unpredictable confusion. His first life ended because he trusted a friend more than his own instincts. Each strategic calculation strengthened his next decisive move. His second life would be built on power nobody could borrow, steal, corrupt, or betray. His previous death made strategic preparation feel reasonable. Jotei had created an enemy through treachery. Another strategic pattern became clearer with sudden pressure. The killing space had transformed that enemy into a mechanical emperor. The strategic approach advanced behind his calm expression. Now every monster he killed would make the empire, the revenge, and the man behind both permanently stronger.